Welcome to another cross-border talk where we will be focusing on the conflict relationships in Central and Eastern Europe, and especially on Romanian-Ukrainian relations. Um, we will be having as a guest Laurențiu Pleșca, a PhD candidate in political science, who is researcher at the Romanian Centre for Russian Studies and analyst at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Laurențiu wrote in November an article on the Romanian-Ukrainian relations and on their history in contemporary times, which basically followed how they started with difficulties and lack of trust. But it looked like in the moment when the strategic partnership between the two countries was signed in October 2023, there is some kind of happy moment or even end or new beginning of these relations. So we'll be discussing a lot of details around these relations, having looks from within the region. And I'll now pass the word to Małgorzata, my colleague from Poland.
Yeah, good evening, good morning, or good day, everybody, depending on what the time of the day are you listening to us. And I wanted to ask the first question about a bit of historical introduction to the issue of Romanian-Ukrainian relations, because I have the impression that while we hear a lot about Polish-Ukrainian relations or Ukrainian aspirations to be the part of Europe, there is relatively little being said about contacts between Bucharest and Kiev. And in fact, it is quite an important partnership. So, Laurențiu, could you tell us how did it develop from the moment when Ukraine gained independence after the fall of the Soviet Union?
Good evening, and thank you so much for the invitation. It means a lot to me. I will start by saying to you that the Romanian Ukrainian relations got off on the wrong foot since the collapse of the USSR. These relations were marked by revisionism and mutual suspicion between Ukraine and Romania, but Russia's unjustified and illegal war in Ukraine, starting from the full invasion, starting from the 24th February 2022, has radically changed the quality of these relations. So, if from the beginning we had a secretive state in terms of I don't know. There were really hard relations between the two countries. We see that from the start of the full invasion, there is a good quality of these relations, and Romania basically has become one of Kiev's allies in Eastern Europe, playing basically a decisive role in supporting Ukraine's military efforts against Russian Federation, and I think it's very important to also know that this relationship between Ukraine and Romania has culminated with something really important, that is signing the Romanian-Ukraine strategic partnership in this year on 10th of October. So, but if we got back to the history, I would say that there was one element that has contributed to the maintenance of the relations based on suspicion between Kiev and Bucharest. And historically speaking, we know that from the end of the First World War until 1991, both Romania and Ukraine were states that suffered from Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and also one of the saddest episodes in the history of the relations between Romania and Ukraine originated in on 1940, when the Soviet Union, taking advantage of Romania's international isolation, basically annexed Bessarabia, northern Bukovina, and Herza County. So basically, we with this period, that's why right now some of Romanians remember this basically the fact that the territory was lost. Also, another territorial issue, it was about the Snake Island and also the division of the continental shelf uh, in the Snake Island. So we know that the Snake Island is basically an island that right now is it basically it was conquered by Russia on the start of the war and was liberated by Ukraine in the early months of the war. So, but in 2009, following a trial, uh, Romania and Ukraine were against each other because the International Court of Justice in Hague basically awarded Romania 80% of this continental shelf near the island, and Ukraine received only 20% of the continental shelf. It was really important because with this decision of the court, basically Romania possessed hydrocarbon resources, and Ukraine retained an important strategic point from which it provided secure maritime links to the port cities of Odessa, for example. So I think it's really important also to talk about this kind of problems between these two states. But more importantly for me is the Minority Act between Ukraine and Romania, because there is a Romanian minority in Ukraine, and it was really important that when, for example, in 2003, Ukraine ratified the European Charter for Minorities, when basically it recognized the existence of Moldovans as a minority in Ukraine, and basically Moldovans as an ethnic group separate from Romanians. In Romania, here in Romania, we really encourage, really are keeping a close eye when we talk about the Moldovan language and the Moldovan minority. So since then, Bucharest basically has almost constantly accused Ukraine about this issue, especially, for example, after 2017, when we had the minority language legislation of restricting Romanians' access to Romanian language in university or in school. So, moreover, it also accused the lack of Romanians in the administration, the Bucharest government. But this issue was not solved completely. But, for example, this year, in the start of autumn, uh, the relationship between Ukraine and Romania on this case, on the minorities issue, got really good because Ukraine changed some of the articles in the minority legislation. And basically, Ukrainian authorities accepted a series of changes, allowing Romanians greater access to the education system in their own language in Bukovina, in Cernăuți, where the majority of minority of Romanians are living. So I think that the relation between Romania and Ukraine has strengthened strongly since the outbreak of the war. And also in the war, Romania has supported Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and also condemned Russia's war, and also was a good advocate of Ukraine when you talk about European integration.
Okay, with this long intro into the difficulties between Romanians and Ukrainians and state elites of these countries, you kind of preempted my second question, which was about Romanian sovereignism. We know and we expect that Romanian sovereignists will increase their influence in politics in the country at the next electoral year, 2024. And also, it is known that Romanian sovereignists tend to be somehow skeptical of Ukraine, and the issue of the Romanian minority was one of the contested
Mhm.
issues contentious issues, but also there were some scandals related to the digging deeper of the channel Bistroe in the last year, and I need to remind also of the scandals with Andrei Marga, a former foreign minister, and Vasile Dâncu, who was Minister of Defense until
Yes.
recently but had to resign. In both cases, they had some statements which sounded too much anti-Ukrainian or Russophile, or somehow sounded outside of the official line, let's say, of Romania. So I want to ask you, maybe having in mind that you said that a part, at least, of these issues are resolved, what do you expect to be the line of Romanian sovereignists towards Ukraine now that they have achieved, or Romania has achieved, that Moldovan language will be called Romanian in Ukraine?
Yes, I think that Romanian sovereignism is characterized basically by a strong emphasis on protecting national interests of Romania and sovereignty, and this has indeed affected the relationship with Ukraine, and the disputes between the two countries, as you mentioned, it's about minority rights, territorial claims, especially concerning regions like Cernăuți. But when you mentioned the case of Canal Bystroie, it was basically a situation where Ukrainian authorities were digging in this canal, but Romanians, of course, were not. I don't think that they were not aware of this, but they were basically the Romanian politicians were starting a debate about this issue. Eventually, it all got clear when some Romanian experts were basically investigating this issue, and they said finally that everything is okay, and nothing is against the law, and it basically respects the international law, this digging in the Canal Bystria. So we see that basically we have different cases and different approaches between the relation of Ukraine and Romania, and of course the pro-Russian parties. I mean, we have in Romania just one, hopefully, just one pro-Russian party that is called AUR, the Union of Romanians Party, and it's the leaders of these parties are trying basically to win political capital based on some of these elements that basically are discord between Ukraine and Romania. But from my point of view, uh, often these anti-Ukrainian sentiments are artificial and are just a provocation to divide between Ukraine and Romania. And I think because you asked me about the next elections in 2024, from my point of view, I think that a new leadership in Romania, or I don't know, some different approaches between Romania and Ukraine will be possible, and the fact that Ukraine basically recognized that the Moldovan language doesn't exist it's a good thing that this happened, because it was really clear that this is a scientific approach, not just a political one. And I mean, I think that post elections, the situation will become much clearer, and I mean, I think that there might be a shift in the stance of the Romanian sovereignty concerning its relations with Ukraine, and this sentiment will be reduced, and the Romanian-Ukrainian relation could open new opportunities for collaboration, for economic ties, and for more amicable interactions between the two states.
Perhaps we should also speak about the relationship in a kind of triangle, because, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, Romania contributed strongly to Ukrainian military effort, particularly in the beginning of the war. And there is another country in Central Europe that also made a great effort to support Ukraine and which is also connected to Romania by many business and political ties. I am speaking, of course, about Poland. There was a visit of the then Prime Minister of Poland, Mateusz Morawiecki, in Romania this
Yeah.
year, where he spoke a lot about Polish Romanian cooperation, also in economy. So I would ask a question: what are the perspectives of this triangle emerging in Central Europe? What can happen in relation between these countries?
Before the war, this triangle that you are mentioning was really not evident at all. So basically, we had mostly bilateral relations between Poland and Romania because they are both member of the European Union and the North Atlantic Alliance, and also Poland-Ukrainian relations. So they were bilateral relations. But now, since the start of the war, we see that the relation dynamics with this triangle is really complex because Poland and Romania really support Ukraine in this war, and basically these two countries have established a degree of solidarity. Of course, we know that Poland is more active in this triangle. We see basically the constant support of Poland that is helping a lot, both humanitarian, military, economic, so on and so forth. But I think this triangle could be more advanced when you talk about the Three Seas Initiative, for example, because the Three Seas Initiative also plays a role, a really important role in collaboration among these three states. And I think that for example, this initiative's ambition to engage more actively Ukraine, but also Moldova, I think they hold the potential for significant benefits for all the countries in the region. Because I think that, for example, after the war, Ukraine's reconstruction efforts will be really important and will stand to gain immensely from having an international platform like this for financing and managing the recovery process. So I think that this I want to point out that this three season initiative may not be able to undertake all the problems, but I see that this triangle of Poland, Romania, and Ukraine, basically based on this. But I will also add Moldova in this. And I don't know how to say for four countries the triangle, but I think it could be a good opportunity for also Moldova, and I think that it can effectively coordinate infrastructure and energy projects between the three states, and basically integrating all the infrastructure at the regional level, and to complement the projects between these three states that already exist. And I think this is also about transportation and also economic ties. And I think that this approach will not only assist Ukraine in an efficient reconstruction process, but also benefit the broader region, the region of Black Sea, but also other regions, but by using Ukrainian infrastructure to basically enhance connectivity from these states. Because we, for example, I know about the project of a new railway from Lviv to Chernouts, and this I think could easily be extended to connect, for example, Poland and Romania. And I think that, for example, because I mentioned Moldova, Moldova's association with the Three Seas Initiative will basically foster this cross-border cooperation between the three states.
I thank you for mentioning Moldova. You're originally from there. You studied in the University of Bucharest and had other studies as well. But Moldova is a country you understand very well. So, what is the role of Republic of Moldova in these relations between Romania and Ukraine?
Yes, you are right. I'm originally from Republic of Moldova, and I think that Moldova holds a really important role in shaping these Romanian-Ukrainian relations. Due its strategic position between Romania and Ukraine, and also we know that Ukraine and Moldova both have European aspiration, and I think that the recent developments in the region, particularly speaking about the granting of the EU candidate status to both Ukraine and Moldova, but also the European Commission's recommendation of opening the negotiations with the European Union. Basically, with this, we see that Romania and Ukraine have Romania and no, but Moldova and Ukraine, they have a closer cooperation, and I think because Romania supports the European path of both Moldova and Ukraine, basically I think this is a really good format of cooperation, because when we talked about the triangle between Poland, Romania and Ukraine, there is this another triangle between Moldova, Romania and Ukraine. And we see that for example, the President of Republic of Moldova, Maya Sandu, she visited Ukraine multiple times, and I think that the shared European ambition between the two states have acted basically as a catalyst for these two countries to be more closer, to cooperate. And I mean, the Republic of Moldova in this war is not threatened directly by military, but I think that Ukraine and Ukrainian army is really fighting also for the sake of the Republic of Moldova, and that is why the Republic of Moldova must help Ukraine as much as possible, as a little country, but as much as possible. For example, to facilitate transportation, to for the grain exports, for example, because Moldova and Ukraine already have many custom control points, and as a EU member, Moldova and Ukraine, these two countries must be really in a close cooperation. And but as I mentioned, when you talk about Romania, for example, has a really true and uninterested, I will say, similarity to Moldova, because we know that we were in the same country. Moldova, Bessarabia was part of Romania, and I think that it's really important to highlight this special relationship between Romania and Moldova, because when we talk about, for example, about the European path. I remember that when basically Moldova started the application for the European Union, it was Romania that helped with this application. But for Ukraine, for example, it helped Poland. So I see this really interesting connection between these two bilaterals. So I think that is really important to maintain this close relationship that was not so evident before the war. But I would also like to mention the fact that we have, for example, the Transnistrian conflict, because this is also an issue and a conversation between Romania, Ukraine, and Moldova. And I think that, for example, Romania has historically uh, held an interest in the resolution of the Transnistrian conflict. And I think that Romania always has advocated for the inclusion of Moldova in the discussion, but more recently to include also Ukraine in the discussion. So Ukraine was more present, for example, in the format 5+2 of the OSCE. But I think that it's really important to include these three countries in the conversation and to be more aware of the fact that basically these two countries can really help Moldova in achieving this reintegration process of Transnistria.
You spoke a lot about issues that have been resolved or that are a good way of being resolved, which are, of course, great news. But there must be also a question about potential challenges. Even the best relations can become spoiled at the moment, and the history of Polish Ukrainian relations also has these recent bad moments. For example, the controversy over the agricultural imports, or now the ongoing another controversy on transport companies from Ukraine, which became a kind of problem for Polish transport companies. So, where do you see the potential challenges and potential problems that should be perhaps resolved in advance in Romanian Ukrainian relations? Are they also in the field of economy, or there is something else?
Of course, I was really optimistic about the Romanian-Ukrainian relations. Of course, there are a lot of issues that remain unresolved, and I think that it will take a lot of time to resolve them. There are on the part of on the economic side, there are like in Poland, some controversies over agricultural imports. Because, for example, in Romania this year, Romanian farmers protested quite massively after the European Union announced the lifting of the import ban on Ukrainian grains. And Romania was really unhappy about this. However, in Romania, I don't know, but they did not oppose the transit of Ukrainian grains, but they said that basically they don't want Ukrainian products on the market. So this is really an issue. And but I know that after the European Commission announced the compensation fund for agriculture in the European Union for countries like Romania, Poland, Slovakia, I, I remember that basically the protests stopped. And on the other hand, now, for example, in Moldova, we have farmer protests. But there are a lot of unresolved issues between the two states, but they basically are about the cases that I was mentioning about. So, for example, okay, the Moldovan minority issue was resolved, the Moldovan language issue was resolved, but this is a long process. So it was resolved when they started discussing about this and they starting some law changes. But I mean, it was not solved finally. And when, for example, we will have next elections, or for example in Romania, next year we have all kinds of the elections. We have parliamentary elections, presidential elections, European election, local elections, all of the elections. I think the problem of or I mean, it will arise some issues also about Ukraine, because when is this political electoral campaign, uh, the politicians have a different approach. For now, the situation is really closer as ever, but we don't know what will happen next, because when a new wave of politician will and the power will be changed, I don't think that the situation will remain as it is, because we have some challenges. As I mentioned, we have the rise of the pro-Russian party hour in Romania. So I think that they will start again this problem and this debate about Ukraine. I mean, it, it's I cannot be optimistic about this, the outcome of the election, for example, in Romania, because we have some polls that they say that the this pro-Russian party will basically gain some of 20% of the votes, and there are also other actors that will try to win some electoral points when debating about this issue. We never know.
We never know, so there is a need to watch, comment, and draw conclusions. As Laurențiu said today, a lot of issues in Romanian Ukrainian relations that seemed unsolvable were actually resolved when Ukraine was put in its most difficult historical situation in recent history, so after the open invasion of the Russian troops. But there are still things that can re-emerge in the future and that will need to be discussed, and a common platform will need to be found. What is important is that these relations are now part of triangles, rectangles, further regional cooperation, which also opens new opportunities for the future. So thank you, Laurențiu, very much for being with us today. Thank you, Vladimir, for asking good questions together with me. And I would like to encourage everybody listening to us to subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also to our channels in other social media, to our sound channels in SoundCloud and Spotify, not to miss any episode of Cross Border Talks. We are waiting for your comments, opinions, suggestions. You can always contact us. And again, thank you very much for being with us.